Hey guys, welcome to today's video. If you don't know me, my name is Camden. Today we'll be potting up this Platycerium bacteria. I got it from a seller on Palm Street under the name Miss Moss Ponner. She's local to the Houston area, I believe, and I had got this plant for, I'd say, $60. So I had thrifted this mount right here. I already put one nail in it, but I had thrifted this mount from Goodwill, and I'm planning on mounting the plant like that, and as it grows it will grow larger and spill over with its fronds. I already put one nail in, or one screw in, and I'm just going to put the second one, third, and fourth one in. So I'm making sure that when I'm putting the screws in, they are at an angle so that when I put the fishing line in, the pressure won't move the screw. So I have the first two screws in, and now I'm going to put the top and the bottom screw in. Alright, so I got all four screws in. I made sure to use rust resistant screws just so that when I water my plant they won't rust. For the substrate, I am going to be using this cocoa coir chunks, and this helps with aeration for the plant roots, and I'm going to be surrounding that in some sphagnum moss for water retention. So the method that I use, I learned from this YouTube channel named Alone in Oasis. I'll link them in my description. But basically, you're going to start off with a mound of sphagnum moss onto the mount like this. And you're going to put a decent amount, like an inch or so, or half an inch. You're going to take your cocoa chunks and place them in the middle, like so. And then you're going to take your plant. Mine's potted in sphagnum moss as well, but I'm not going to remove any of this to disturb the roots. So I'm just going to kind of wrap cocoa chunks around the plant like this. And it also helps for the sphagnum moss to be a little moist when you're doing this, just so that it's easier to work with. And now that I have surrounded the plant in cocoa chunks, I'm going to go ahead and go with another layer of sphagnum moss. And you're just going to wrap around the cocoa chunks like this. And when you're wrapping it, you want to make sure that you're staying near the nails or the screws that you put in, just so that you can reach it with the fishing line that we'll be using. And as you go, you want to make sure you squeeze it down just so that you get a nice shape going. And try to be gentle with the foliage. And I say when you're doing this method, you want to make sure that you overpack the sphagnum moss because it will shrink when you put the fishing line. And the shape that you want to go for when you're mounting it is a circle. That's like the only method that I know how to do. I'm sure there are other ways. I've seen people do like flat style square methods with sphagnum moss, but I don't know how to do that yet. So my experience is not that great. But this method has worked good for me, so I'm going to be sticking with this one. So now I have the sphagnum moss completely wrapped around the cocoa chunks, and I'm going to go in with this fishing line. You can also use green thread, but I prefer fishing line as you won't be able to see it. So you're going to take a little bit. You're not going to cut anything yet. You're just going to take it and you're going to tie it onto one of the screws. And you want to tie it at least 3 or 4 times just to make sure nothing gets loose, because that is the last thing that you want. Alright, so now that I have it tied, I'm going to go on one side and go back and forth between the two screws to make sure this half is completely held down. I'm going to add a little bit more sphagnum moss because I know it will shrink down as I wrap it. So I'm going to press it in, and I'm going to take the line, and I'm going to go in a rough shape. You don't want to be too precise yet, because as you layer on more fishing line, it will shape itself. And you just want to do back and forth motions until you get all the sphagnum moss contained. You can wrap it around the nail a couple of times, but I just seesaw back and forth between the two nails with the string. And just make sure that it goes completely under the screw. And then if you need to, you can add more sphagnum moss. And you just want to go over any areas that you might see sticking up from the sphagnum moss until it's completely flat. So I am done with this half. I'm going to move on to this lower half here. As you can see, it's a little bit rounder at the top here than it is on the bottom, and it did deflate a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the bottom half. And you're going to follow the same principle where you swing back and forth between the two screws. And when I'm doing this, I'm not touching the roll at all. I just set the roll down and I move the string itself back and forth. This just allows me to work freely without the roll getting in the way. Alright, so I've finished the lower half now, and I'm going to go ahead and tie it off on one of these sides. So we're going to cut off a good amount just to make sure. And we're going to wrap it around the screw and tie it off. And then after you do the first two halves, this is what it should look like. There you go. And then, so I just did this half and this half just so that it's smooth, but then now we have to do this half just so that this part stays completely still. And then for the second round, I'm going to just add a little bit more sphagnum moss on top just to make it more round for the plant to grow. And then we're just going to be following the same process that we did for the first two halves. We're going to tie it on one side and then seesaw on one side and go for the other side as well. Alright, and then for the second part, we're going to follow the same process. We're going to tie this into this nail or screw, and we're going to do it 3 or 4 times just to make sure that it stays on. And then you're going to cut whatever you have left over. And then I'm going to keep the string over here, and we're going to just seesaw our way from this end to the other end right here. We're going to wrap around the nail, work our way back up and over right near the front of the plant, and then we're going to go back and forth. And then remember, just feel free to add more sphagnum moss if you feel the need that it needs more. Alright, and then we're done with this half. Here you can see that this half is much more flat compared to this half. So now that we're done with this half, we're just going to follow the same process again and wrap this side. Alright, now that I got both sides done, I'm going to cut off a good amount and just tie it off again. And remember, when you tie it off, you want to tie it at least 3 or 4 times. And then now that I tied it off, I'm just going to cut off whatever I have left, and we are done. And just want to brush off any loose sphagnum moss that you have, and here's the finished product. So I find that Platycerium care is really easy. They like bright light and 1/4 dilution of fertilizer. That's just what I use. I use Purived. It recommends 1 capful for 1 gallon, so I use 1/4 cap. And I just let them soak for at least 3 to 4 minutes, and after I just let them drain and put them back in bright light. I know when to water when the moss around the plant is slightly crunchy and dry. You don't want to have them sitting in water a long time because then the roots will rot, and you don't want them to be completely dry for a while or else the roots will die off. As of now, this Platycerium is going to be, I believe, my 4th Platycerium. I have a Superbum and a Bifurcatum, but this one is one of my first rare Platycerium or more pricier ones, and yeah, I'm really excited to have this in my collection. So I just want to thank you guys for watching today's video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments, and if you like my content, consider subscribing. It really means a lot to me, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.